My fellow Americans, are you tired of the new normal? Are you tired of the lies?
Election fraud. You know, the thing that the mainstream media and big tech says doesn't exist?
It is time to end it.
We must keep going. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving.
Many of you are sitting here because you're wanting to know what the plan is.
This has to be peaceful. We have the right to peacefully assemble.
The solution has been in front of us all along.
Ask God if you should step into the gap and become a part of the plan.
The plan is simple.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
We are the plan.
If you're waiting for others to do the work for you, you're going to be waiting a long time.
We are Conservative Daily.
Welcome back. Good evening, everybody, to Conservative Daily Podcast. My name is Apollo. I am your captain today. Everyone, few prayers for Joe and everybody who's traveling right now. Hopefully, you should be landed at this point, but always pray that he is safe on his travels, that the speaking event he's going to be at this weekend, that it goes beautifully. Just pay attention to our channels for the stream of that coming up very soon. And also remember that this evening we do have our boys coming in hot at 8 o'clock Eastern, so look out for that. Very excited, and what a pleasure it is to be working with them. Now, before we jump in, remember that we are, of course, blessed to benefit from the work of Mike Lindell. Please bless him and also bless Conservative Daily, if you like, by using promo code CD21 at mypillow.com at my store. We have the new Frank Speech platform that's launched today, so awesome things to come. We're very excited for what we've been able to build and for what the future holds. With that, you guys, we have an awesome guest this evening. We have Jamie Glazov. He is a PhD in history. He's written a new book titled Barack Obama's True Legacy, How He Transformed America. This is actually a really cool topic for me, so I'm excited we get to have him on. You can follow him on Twitter at Jamie Glazov. That's GAMIEGLAZOV. And on Getter at J Glazov. He has an interesting history, his family background. I'm going to let him explain that and introduce himself properly to you. But Obama was an interesting one because my mother and I, we used to geek out looking into alternative history and researching some of these things. So Barack Obama's background was very commonly discussed in my household as a child. And now, as we see all the things that have rolled out with the Obama administration, with the Biden administration, which looks like it has a puppet hand up its rear the entire time that we've been witnessing this cluster. I'm excited to have Jamie on, and he can explain a little bit more about this to us. So, without any further ado, Jamie, it's really a pleasure to have you on Conservative Daily. Thank you for joining us today.
To be here, Apollo. I really appreciate it.
So do us a favor, introduce yourself. You have quite an awesome background, and I'd like to have you do it because I don't think I would do it justice.
Well, thank you, Apollo. Perhaps on this occasion I can start with that Mom and Dad were dissidents in the Soviet Union. They were very, very brave, noble, courageous people, and I love them dearly. And they were so brave, I don't think that I could ever be as brave as they were. And they stood up against the Soviet Empire, the evil empire, and they risked the Gulag. And it was a very, very evil system, spawned and engendered by a very evil ideology. And that's a 5-hour story, maybe even a 5-day story. But let's just say we got out of there and we landed in the United States, and I was 5.5 years old. And so grateful to be in America, and I love America so much. We were in Canada for a little while, or for a long time, but I came back here. And we escaped the Soviet Union, but the Soviet Union has come to us now. And it's a very scary time. There's a Bolshevik revolution that's brewing here. There's been a Bolshevik coup here. And when you look at what's happening today, the catastrophe of Biden, you look at the border, you look at what happened in Afghanistan, you look at what's happening to the economy, you look at the damage being done to American institution and to this very, very precious experiment that is the United States, you see the seeds of it. You see where this catastrophe was fertilized. And of course, we can go back. Those of us that understand the left very well, we know it goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden. It's a very evil, satanic ideology. The more you study it, the more you begin to understand that leftism is all about making yourself a god. But before we get into all this heavy philosophical analyzation, one thing is clear, that many of the seeds of this catastrophe were planted during the Obama administration. And I got 11 experts to put 18 essays together. And they did. And it's a frightening read, sobering read, and a chilling read. Because when you begin to read essay after essay, you begin to see where the sinking of the United States really began. And if not began, then escalated. So a little bit of background in the context for this. And
Here, and you're breaking up a little bit, Jamie. Just give me 1 minute. It looks like you did freeze a little bit. So, guys, give me 1 second. I want to make sure we get Jamie back because I want to make sure that you hear all this. We're going to go to a quick commercial break. I'll be right back.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a My Pillow or not, you need to get the brand new My Pillow 2.0. Call or go to mypillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time, when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
Okay, so looks like we've got Jimmy back. So we just lost you a little bit at the end of that, but what you're saying I think is really important. You know, I remember it very well. I was not old enough to vote at the time when Obama was elected to his first term, but it was a kind of an eerie feeling even in my family as we were watching him and the platform that he had, his seemingly, this out of nowhere rise and the coverage that he was given and his popularity and his really eerie sway that he seemed to have over the public through his speeches, the techniques that were employed in order to give him this hypnotic effect. And I remember even when I was young, my mother and I were looking, we're like, where did this guy come from? You know, and we remember him winning and the platform and hope and change and all this unity, the exact opposite of what his legacy actually rolled out to be. And I know we're going to talk about that, but it was a very eerie feeling, at least from our perspective. So, I mean, you talk about these color revolutions, about this, subversion of everything. So, being the man, explain a little bit where this came from, because I know his history is fascinating, but the effect that we've seen over the last few administrations, even coming out of the Bush administration, which I wouldn't exactly say was a cakewalk, with the exception of the manufactured unity that Americans felt after these terrorist attacks. It's really frightening to see how far the political landscape has changed in the United States.
Absolutely, Apollo. And we've got some chapters in our book by John Drew, by Jeffrey Nyquist, which examines the young Obama, the Marxist Obama, and also the Muslim Obama. And when I say that, look, let me touch on that for a minute, because when that was even spoken, even a little bit, people are, oh, this is Islamophobia. Oh, that's so bad. Well, what's wrong with being Muslim? Nobody's saying that it's bad. We're just asking. For instance, my father went on a religious journey in his youth. Atheist Soviet Union. Studied Judaism, studied Islam, studied Christianity, studied Taoism, studied Buddhism. He ended up finding Jesus Christ, or Jesus Christ found him. It's just a spiritual journey? What's wrong with asking that question? You can't ask that question about Obama. We could do a movie about Obama in terms of his spiritual journey. We couldn't do it. Dr. Daniel Pipes has documented Obama's Muslim youth. Then all of a sudden, you go forward in the timeline, he's some kind of a Christian, am I right? The question needs to be asked, when was the conversion moment? Why has nobody ever asked this question? This is very symbolic of everything else in terms of his past. And we kind of know, let's just put it this way. If he's a Christian, but he was once a Muslim, then there's apostasy. Let me just leave that there. But there's a mystery there. Also his Marxist youth, which our authors talk about in our book. And it's very interesting, Apollo, because I studied psychopaths for a long time. I've written a book, Jihadist Psychopath, which shows how not just the jihadist enemy, but how our leftist enemy gets what it wants with us. Because psychopaths, they learn from the serpent. They pretend they're acting in your interest, but they're really destroying you. There's a lot of tactics there. Why I'm bringing this up is when the serpent approached Eve and said, I'm acting in your interests. Just eat the apple because you can become God. You'll live forever. And all these promises. That sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Because with Obama, in our book, our authors document this. When he was young, he knew that in order for the Marxist revolution to succeed, forget about growing long hair, forget about tipping over tables and screaming, put on a tie, put on a suit, you put on a smile. And in order to destroy the middle class, you pretend you're part of the middle class. These are very, very brilliant people. It's the Alinskyite strategy. Mm-hmm. And they pretend that they're acting in your interests. And as you use the word hypnotic, if I'm correct, bingo. It doesn't matter who you love. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter this or that. Come join us. I'm not interested in the blue states of America. I'm not interested in the red states of America. I'm interested in the United States of America. It's just come and join us. This is the leftist humanity. And mask, as we know, because the Bolsheviks did it and the Khmer Rouge did it and the Maoist revolution did it in the beginning. There's this hypnotic way of joining humanity. We're all going to hold hands and we're all going to smile. And then all of a sudden the killing fields are right around. That's how Marxism operates. That's how Obama operated. That hope and change has now led to unvetted illegals being put on planes and buses around our country. And it's very much intertwined with the disaster in Afghanistan and the 5 other million disasters that are happening right in front of our eyes. So these Marxists come with smiles. They come with promises of rainbows. And there's malice behind that mask. And Marxists are very good at it. And Obama
perfected it is a good way to put it. I'd not really had much regard for the political game or for politics or for left and right, fairly young because of 9/11. And even so, as much as you see them talk through the side of their mouth and their little crocodile tears and the way that some of these people have regard for you, it seemed like during Obama's administration there was a level up. There was a stark brazenness for how they will lie and how they will doublespeak. I mean, going through the Affordable Care Act, through the things they were doing with the economy, through the rhetoric about immigrants and unity, and wanting to unite the black and the white peoples. And I mean, it was so in your face and so dripping because there was a dryness to the political dialogue. If you go back to George Bush and some of the previous administrations, there was kind of a dry coldness to it. And since Obama and ever since then, including with Hillary and now what we've seen over the last decade, now there's almost it's pregnant with like this oozing feeling, this dripping desire to get you to feel these things. It's like intoxicating in a way that I haven't really seen, or that I didn't notice when I was a younger child. And now we see the effects of some of these with these color revolutions, with Antifa, with BLM, and with so much of the population that is so polarized to some of these ideas that we now are watching our own destruction through the selling of our data, through the erasure of our rights and healthcare systems, with the borders, with the sovereignty of our speech, with the Second Amendment, which they never seem to want to give up. More and more and more encroachments on our privacy, and people are so polarized that they keep looking at each other like they're the enemy while they're watching their own destruction all around them. Like they can see we're all being corralled into the same tank that's going to be, dropped into the boiling pit of hell, and yet we're all pointing fingers at each other.
You are so correct, and this is the leftist enterprise. I've written a book, United in Hate, where I explored and documented the political pilgrims and fellow travelers, the leftists who traveled to Stalin's, traveled to North Vietnam. Then there was the jihadist period, and they went to worship the paradises while there was hell, and many of them themselves sacrificed themselves on the altar of their utopian ideals. There's a certain death wish that happens here, and it's very interesting. Potions that are in these syringes that they've been telling us and telling people to inject themselves with. It's very interesting what cannot be said. And there's so many people, you can see it. It's that same Bolshevik mentality. You can see people lining up for it to get it. And they kind of see people falling and dying, and there's people dying, but I better get this shot, because if I don't, then Susie and Becky and Tiffany won't like me anymore. And then people will think I like Donald Trump, so I better get it. It's incredible how people will sacrifice themselves to be accepted in a community, to get a pat on the back from that one party system. So there's something there, and I've been fascinated with this all my life, because this particular ideology and how it entrances people and convinces them to commit suicide rather than face excommunication, because leftism in the end is a social life. And this is fascinating, and I study it, and it's horrifying at the same time. And so Obama, he can't be touched, he couldn't be criticized. And at the same time, this guy that's standing up there, and he's so proud and he's so arrogant, and he's talking about hope and change. Let's just mention this. In Afghanistan in 2009, rules of engagement began. You couldn't fire at the enemy unless they fired first or were getting ready to fire first. If somebody was planning a bomb, you could shoot, but if they were walking away, you couldn't. You had to give 24 to 48-hour notice if you were going to do a surprise raid. You had to have Afghan civilians with you. I could go on and on and on. My point is that under Obama, American soldiers had to operate under Islamic law. And the biggest priority under Obama was to escalate American deaths and to minimize Taliban, Al-Qaeda deaths, to win over the hearts and minds. American soldiers would write to their families and say, we're not scared of the Taliban. We're not scared of Al-Qaeda. These rules of engagement are going to kill us. And if you look at the percentages of how many Americans lost their lives and were maimed and mutilated after these rules of engagement, you get a certain picture of who Obama really was. That was the foundation to our embarrassing and catastrophic defeat in Afghanistan, rooted in the Obama administration. When you study this record, it's hell. And yet, on the front picture of this catastrophe is a man speaking of hope and change, and there's so many people in the audience crying and weeping with joy and emotion, same way that they cried in the stadiums when the North Korean troops march up and down, and when Stalin was giving his speeches. It's really eerie stuff, Apollo, and it's not new. We've seen it all before. It's another totalitarian enterprise.
If I want to get to some of the particulars about this administration as it connects to Obama, but actually what you just mentioned about the rules of engagement and some of the things that went on during that war, if you could, I'd like you to go a little bit and give a few more details on that, because that's something that, myself included, I haven't thought about in quite some time, and I think it's very important to understand the history.
Yeah. And this is the key. You would think, and I'm not blaming you, by the way, but it kind of says something, doesn't it? That, do we hear, like, Anderson Cooper really needed to find out from Stormy Daniels if a condom was being used. He's an investigative reporter. He's got to get to the bottom of this. When was the last time you heard the rules of engagement being spoken about? When thousands of our boys and girls came back with no arms and no legs, or didn't come back at all? Why hasn't that been discussed, that was the direct result of the rules of engagement that Mr. Hope and Change brought in? I mean, there has to be a deep hatred of America and Americans to subject Americans to Islamic law in a battle, because that's what happened. Because
explain that practically.
Well, there's Islamic law in Afghanistan. It never really went away on many realms, even while we were there. And Americans are the kufr. They're the infidel. They're the unbelievers. And they are second-class to third-class citizens, wherever you want to put them. And the Muslim lives come first. And so that's really what it was. You have to read Stephen Coughlin. I mean, of course, you need to read my book, but Stephen Coughlin, Catastrophic Failure. That's the book everybody has to read as well, because he spells this all out, documents all of it. And our soldiers had their hands tied behind their back. I mean, Sun Tzu, one of the main principles is we win by surprise. You don't tell your enemy what you're doing ahead of time, but that's exactly what Americans had to do. The soldiers had to say, we're raiding in 24 to 48 hours. Then there were rules even when they got there. Then you can't fire first, like I said. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Just, go and, read my book, She Had a Psychopath. And of course, check out this book on Barack Obama. Go study it. But it was a catastrophe. And it led to the lack of success, one could say, in that war, because we couldn't do anything. So in the end, we know the story and how it played out. And I mean, if you even want to go ahead of time, I think a 6-year-old knows that when you're getting out of a war, you probably take your truck back first and then you get out. Or maybe a 4-year-old understands that. But we left all of our equipment and treasure there, the military treasure. You don't think that was calculated? You don't think that that's intentional? And people are just dumbfounded watching this, because it's some kind of surreal, absurd theater. This is some kind of dark comedy. We've got this guy with dementia that's our president. He doesn't know where he's at. He keeps whispering that he's going to get in trouble if he does this or that. He's on stage. We see what happened in Afghanistan. This is all calculated. This is all intentional. And it's not happening out of thin air. It happened because of what Obama implemented. At the border, Apollo, we now have a situation where tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, unvetted illegals coming into the country, many of them from China, many of them from the Middle East. We don't even know who these people are. Why is this happening? Well, I don't know. Maybe read Matthew Vadum's essay in our book on Barack Obama. Obama began it. He undermined the law enforcement in terms of illegals, didn't let them do a thing. He stopped the building of the wall. He punished places, workplaces, other institutions that actually tried to enforce proper immigration requirements. It's such a frightening story in terms of immigration / that's another thing. It's not immigration. He very much molded and he molded it like clay, because somehow unvetted illegals coming into our country somehow became, if you're opposed to that, you're somehow against immigration. It's brilliant how they've done this. It's not immigration. I'm an immigrant. My parents are immigrants. We kind of did things the right way.
My father came over across on Ellis Island. He's a Greek immigrant, and his whole family.
Yes.
I mean, the people who buy this, it's laughable to me. I mean, it's not funny, but it's laughable. I mean, the fact that you can't understand these very clear, differences in language, And the way that they've whitewashed things and they've made it so emotional is really, really disturbing.
Yes, and Paulo, I come from that environment. I was 5.5 years old, but believe me, even as a child, you have a certain form of PTSD and trauma the rest of your life, even when you're there for a couple years. But why I bring that up is how much I love this country and how much I treasure this wonderful and beautiful experiment. But I can smell certain things. You see, in the Soviet Union, there's just unwritten rules of what you can say and what you don't say, and everybody understands it. And in our society now, it's just interesting. We just know what you can and cannot say anymore. I remember even during COVID, I was at certain gyms and there was just, this happened a million times, but there was this one lady one time and she wanted us to take a video of her doing something, lifting some weight or whatever. And then she was like, 1 second, I got to put my mask on because my friends are going to see me. I don't want them to see me without the mask. And I remember thinking about that. I was like, wow. So she's got to put that on because her friends are going to see her. So she better put it on, just this pressure. In a society now, it's not you, Apollo. It's not me, because I'll go to jail if I have to continue speaking the truth. But on many realms of our society now, if there are 10, 20 people in a room in Hollywood, on our campuses, many places, and somebody says, does a woman have a penis? Very large number of people in that room are too scared to say no. And I'm not exaggerating. And this is symbolic of how Bolshevism takes over a country, that people are so intimidated that they cannot even speak what they see that's true. They can't name the elephant in the room. And that's how the leftists operate, by intimidation and the threat of excommunication.
You're 100% right. Can you, we've actually, do you have, I know we said about 30 minutes. Do you have a little bit more time? Can we go over?
I got some more time. I'm very honored, my friend.
Perfect. We have a couple commercial slots and we'll be back in a couple minutes. And then I want to ask you specifically about this administration, especially on the heels of Donald Trump. What a stark contrast. So you guys stay tuned. Make sure that you check out Jamie Glazov's book. I am ordering a copy on this commercial break, possibly 2, because I think my mother's really going to enjoy it. But we'll be right back and continue the conversation. Jamie, thank you.
Today, I address you not only as a citizen of the United States, but as an American, standing for all humanity. We are faced with the gravest of challenges. For the first time in the history of our nation, technology has been activated that attacks our Constitution with the capacity to destroy our future.
Absolute proof of the biggest cyber attack in history. It's a takeover of our country.
We must remove voting machines and any electronic devices from all elections forever. All of you praying with us need to know we have the tools and evidence to prevent catastrophic results, and we can secure our freedom. Everything that can be done to prevent this disaster is being called into service. The human drive for excellence, knowledge. Every step of the ladder of experience has been taken to expose the truth.
Let's take their country. How are we going to do it? Let's use it with computers so we don't even have to fire a shot.
Data experts have worked countless hours to bring forth the truth to the American people. This is a war on national security. This is a war between good and evil. This is a war that will affect what our country becomes.
I just want to know, everyone out there, all the evil that's out there, we are never quitting till we get to the truth, ever.
Through all the chaos that is our history, through all of the wrongs and discord, through all the pain and suffering, through all our times, there is one thing that has nourished and elevated our souls, and that is our faith in God and courage. We must be brave.
And I encourage you to use this time at home to get back in the Word, read our Bibles, and spend time with our families. We will get through this and get back to a place that's stronger and safer than ever.
Elections have consequences. These selections are transforming the spirit of our country. The focus of the entire nation must be on this event.
God gave me a platform for a voice for such a time as this.
We as a people must stand for the American dream. One nation under God, for liberty and justice for all.
If the election of 2020 didn't happen, we would never, ever, ever have gotten to this great place we're going to get to. Trust me on that. Ever. This was all God's plan, and we are in the greatest revival for Jesus in history. God bless you all.
Hello, I'm Chet DCF, your very own AI firearms expert.
Okay, Chet DCF, do you have a recommendation for my range time today?
The Smith & Wesson 627 in 357 Magnum would be the perfect choice.
Thank you, Chet DCF.
You are welcome. Have a nice day.
Come join the DCF family today, where we keep the range hot and the deals hotter.
All right, everyone, check out dcfguns.com. Even if you're not in Colorado, go to the online store, and they will have a chat DCF for you online as well and answer all your questions. If you live in a commie state, they'll make sure that you can legally get whatever you need. And then, of course, mark your calendars for the event coming up in August for Mike Lindell. Back again, still with Jamie Glazov. So I just ordered several of your books, actually. As well as the one that you mentioned by Mr. Coughlin. So I'm very excited to get through all of these. But, while we have a little bit more time, we talked a little bit about the history. You clearly in your own life and your own family, as I have in some ways, have seen, some of the ways that these communist groups and these forces will take over. I have family who was actually tortured by communists for several years in work camps. They killed their entire family, village destroyed when they went back there finally. It has touched my family, and it's something that I remember very strikingly growing up with, especially seeing some of the things and some of the shifts that have happened in the United States. Now, America had a big wake-up call with Donald Trump.
Oh, Paulo, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you tell me what is your background? What country is that?
Greece.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, not at all. My uncle and my father's family were in Albania. They had a lot of family. They had troops come over. Many people died, and my uncle Tom. There's actually an article written in Time magazine about him. He was held in a work camp and tortured for several years. But anyways, we Americans had a big respite and a big wake up call, because it's all too evident when you see policies and the strength and the difference in approach to foreign policy as well as domestic. What exactly the country can look like and what it looks like when people actually work for the interests of the American people. Now we're seeing with the Biden administration. Now we see this huge slide backwards, if you can call it that. And, obviously a lot of this comes from Obama. It's very obvious to anyone who's paying attention that Biden and a lot of these officials are not the ones actually running the show. That's painfully obvious. So if you could just fill in a few of those gaps, because the roots go quite some ways back, and it's getting more and more obvious. But I fear that many people still don't understand exactly where a lot of it comes from.
Yeah, they don't understand, and a lot of people don't want to understand. A lot of people have an emotional incapacity. And they want to shut people like me up because they want to get through the day, and you got to look at the truth, because then you can prepare yourself. And where do we start? Look, they've done a lot to weaken us. Let's look at what they've done. Let's begin with the American. The potions in the syringes made the American military take those. These are this is the that's defending the United States. So they harm them. And just think about this, Apollo. Our American soldiers are being educated, being told, with all this CRT and all this Marxist training, So you've got, okay, welcome, you're an American soldier now. You're going to defend a country that you should hate. This is an oppressive imperialist country based on racism, and we don't deserve to exist, and our society and our country is not worth defending and saving. Now get out there and defend us, Johnny. It's absurd. But the Marxists are very clever what they've done. So they are brainwashing and indoctrinating our soldiers to defend a country that's not worth defending. So that's a very important segment right there, just on that realm alone. And sometimes I don't even know what direction to go to. And just I fill in some puzzles sometimes, and people might sometimes think, hey, he's all over the place. There's a little bit of a method to my madness because I'm filling in a puzzle. So I just want to say this here for a minute. Some of this is just so obvious, but people are not seeing it. So Obama, we just joke. ISIS, those guys on their Humvees and JVs. Yeah. So yeah, that's really funny. That's really funny. These are people who are raping Yazidi girls. This is something I've dedicated my life to defending young Muslim girls suffering under Islamic gender apartheid. It is such a nightmarish barbarity that these Muslim girls and women have to endure. And Obama's joking about it. He's or dismissive about it. And there's nothing funny about it. No, these aren't just people on Humvees or whatever it is that he was saying in their vans, their JVs. Here's the question. Why could we see them? Why were they all going up and down those fields and up and down those highways and had all those sex slaves and killed all those people? Then Trump comes in. Let me see. Was it 2 weeks? Was it 2 months? Was it 5 months? Go take a look at the record. Blink of an eye, Trump just takes them out. He takes away 95% of ISIS territory by letting the military do its job, which Obama didn't let do. So you got to ask yourself, why did Trump defeat ISIS in the blink of an eye and Obama for all those years did not? Got to ask yourself, why? And the answers, we already know what the answer is, because he was enabling our enemies, and it's very scary. And Robert Spencer in our book has some very scary, sobering essays on how Obama enabled jihad, how he enabled ISIS, how he enabled Islamic terrorism. It's just absolutely frightening. And we see that all happening today. This is Obama's third term, and all of those ugly flowers, if that's one way you could say, are blooming in a bad way on the bad realm, because Biden is clearly being controlled by higher forces and following the directions of what he's supposed to do, which is to destroy this country, and then everybody's going to be suffering, and it's going to be chaos and mayhem. And then all of a sudden, Schwab and Yuval Harari come forward and say, hey, don't worry about it. We're going to save you. Just take this little digital ID here and everything will be okay. And that's right around the corner. And we need to be very honest about this and prepare.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, we see this accelerating very much now. Obviously, all of it's connected. A lot of the data especially goes back to Obama and some of these big tech moves. And with the NDAA, now we see the fruits of the propagandization of the American people in ways that that I don't think many people understood how bad it's gotten already until the last few years, particularly with COVID. The wars and the defense contractors, all the things that have now culminated in Ukraine. I mean, it's so over the top now. And now you see in this very lockstep fashion, very coordinated, you see the CBDCs, you see the takedown of the economy, you see these deals with China, you see the complete weaponization of the justice system. You see how corrupt a lot of these judges are. You see the FBI and all these holdouts who are clearly not really beholden to Biden himself, or like this family. But I mean, with the COVID agenda, with the digital IDs, now they're pushing as this child trafficking thing is getting attention. as the food supply is getting destroyed, as the railroads are snapping up all this control with all these derailments, and now all of a sudden you see programs to chip your child, make sure that you know where your kid is, and they sneak, just like they always do, they sneak these things in as if it's a benefit to you because they care, and it just feels like we're walking in the same trap that we have for the last 20 years over and over again.
Yeah.
And it feels like people haven't really realized that maybe they should take a step back yet.
Yeah. And it's what you were very profoundly referring to earlier in our interview. It's fascinating, horrifying how evil works. And Antonio Gramsci, he gave the advice, forget about the political sphere, get the culture first. And the leftists did that. They understood, and they did it. They took over academia. They took over Hollywood. They took over the higher culture. And so what happened? So we've got a younger generation today. They've never heard of Khmer Rouge. They've never heard of Mao Zedong. They've never heard of Stalin. And am I against maybe a tattoo here, a tattoo here? I'm not a fanatic, but why I bring that up is everybody's getting tatted now, the younger generation. Oh, they're just getting tatted. They're getting tatted. Oh, that's really cool. Oh, their Instagram, their selfie. Now they're doing, all their gyrating, dancing on these reels and TikTok. It's just coming from all sides. And my point is that I know these young people now, their whole body is tatted and it's really cool. And guess what? 40 years ago, if somebody came up to our generation and said, here's a chip, we're just going to put it right here, if you don't mind, most of us would have said, whoa, you crazy? But today, when a young person is completely tatted and is just watching Netflix all day, and the women are on their OnlyFans and on Instagram, and then somebody comes and says, oh, you want to keep making money? You want to eat? Yeah, just put this chip right under here, and it can go underneath this tattoo. A very large number of this younger generation now goes, oh, that's cool. And this is the same chapter as Eve eating the apple. It's very intertwined, because once that chip goes in, this is a longer discussion, Apollo. I don't mean to go on these long tirades. When Jesus said it'll be as in the days of Noah, he was referring to many, many things, and I don't understand everything. However, during the days of Noah, the fallen angels were messing with our DNA, with the Nephilim, and that story. And today, the evil powers are messing with our DNA again, and it's a very serious thing. And so also with not just with the potions, but with the chip that's coming in and all this AI stuff, it's all interwoven with playing with our DNA again. So there's a spiritual war right in front of our eyes, and it's deadly serious, and the enemy is toying with the human genome, and the whole time so many people are now just dancing on TikTok, and they just think that this new tattoo they have with this little chip underneath is just really cool. And it's scary. It's very scary.
Well, first of all, please don't ever apologize on this show, at least not if I'm hosting, for going into these tirades. This is actually the type of format of conversation that I enjoy, and you're 100% right. That is exactly what this is about. As much as we can talk about depopulation in simply a methodical Malthusian sense, it is certainly more than that. The technology that they've been rolling out and all these things we can talk about in terms of death rates and making people controllable because of resources and all that, it's clearly something much more than that. And your connection to the Bible there is spot on. It's they tell you, they put it right in your face with capturing your consciousness and wanting to transmit everyone into the digital universe. Well, they will be the gods in the clouds, and your genetic code is something that we can revolutionize humanity, and we will be able to perfect man and birth and eliminate all this strife. It's all the devil whispering in your ear. If it's all right, if I can, actually, I'll let you respond to that, because I know I just said a mouthful, and then I have a question regarding this executive order that came out yesterday.
Oh, yeah, well, our brains are very small, and my brain is very small as well. And when I say that, I always just don't want to sound like I just understand what God is doing in the spiritual war. We're always trying to understand, but something very clear is going on when we think about the Tower of Babel. They tried to create heaven on earth. They tried to reach the heavens, but in some way they're creating their own paradise. Humans are trying to get back to Eden, but on their own, without Jesus and without God. And that leads to hell. And there's a reason why God dispersed them and gave them different languages. And so it's very, very complicated, because on some realms, yes, we should be as one and love each other, all those things. But it's very complicated, because on another level, Satan wants us all as one, because then he controls us much more easily. And so when Donald Trump wants some borders for the United States, when Donald Trump is kind of looking out for America, these Luciferian globalists need him out of the way. It's very interesting. Whenever I talk about Christ and the spiritual war, I can actually feel a lot of people just rolling their eyes. Oh, what's this fanatic talking about? It's fascinating that Klaus Schwab and these people like Yuval Harari are actually announcing these things. Yuval Harari is announcing the end of free will, etc., etc., etc. And what more do you need than the enemy announcing their plans? But my point overall is that in order to get us all as one, and now technologically, when we think in Revelation, when it says that without the mark of the beast, you're not going to be able to buy or sell. 10 years ago, we would be thinking, how's this going to happen? Today, we can see it. Just look at what happened to the truckers in Canada, and just look at what they're getting ready. So the technocrats, the Bolshevik technocrats, they're creating this one world order. And it's going to be a Chinese-style social credit system. And very, very soon, if we're even going to be allowed to do this. But let's say I do this in some way or form. I'm going to go to the store, give my credit card, and they're going to say, oh, sorry, Mr. Glazov, you don't have the right political views, and we can't accept your credit card now. Just go to the re-education camp on this intersection and come back to us in 2 months with a certificate and a vaccination card, and we'll see if you can use your card again. And people can snicker, but that's right around the corner.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, they already have all the infrastructure. They already have it all. It's just, getting us to that point where I guess they think that we'll accept it enough when they force it down our throats. You mentioned the military, and you mentioned this weird split mind that I imagine some of the military must have, because obviously they're a lot, and they, I think a lot of them get kind of the short end of the stick. Including many at a higher level in the military who are working very hard to protect this country and do have our interests at heart. Then you have this destruction of the ideological basis of our military with all the CRT, all this woke propaganda that they've been rolling in. They're allowing this complete degeneracy and embarrassing, disgraceful behavior. Like you have these people dressed in fetish outfits, and you're allowing it on military bases. I mean, you have drag shows on army bases. What are we doing here? This can't be like, I feel like I'm watching a bad cartoon sometimes. And here we are now, they're marching us towards war. So you have these people who either are in the military, have complete disdain for American culture, or at least traditional culture. Many of them, it seems like, disdain for America, and yet they're in the military. And now we're looking at the possibility of, if not likelihood of, multiple major conflicts. Not even just counting what we're actually doing in Ukraine and pretending like, we're just supporting a poor little, country to resist the evil Russia. But now you have Biden releasing this executive order yesterday saying that they are, he's now authorizing the reserves to go effectively conduct Operation Atlantic Resolve, which is, of course, Russia and the Donbass and Ukraine. And yet we're not officially at war. I mean, this is a kind of a frightening thing to see come out from the White House, especially given you mentioned the shots. So what are we looking at? He literally in the last week or two has announced that we are low on munitions. We're low on bombs. We've seen over the last year massive problems in health effects of our enlisted across all branches who were given this vaccine. We have major recruiting shortfalls. We have people leaving in droves. We have people who are qualified to actually fulfill combat roles who are sidelined because they didn't get the shot and haven't been put into those roles. We have equipment and all kinds of things and money that we've just been throwing away to Ukraine, including all the stuff that we left in Afghanistan. So on paper, the U.S. military does not look like it's in a good position, especially not to defend ourselves against Russia or in any major conflict, including the lack of strategic energy reserves. And now here he is going, I'm going to commit to a conflict that we're not officially engaged in. I mean, if you want to destroy a country and you want to put us in a bad spot militarily, I don't know that I could write a better script. Am I missing something?
No, you are right on. And my heart is torn, and it's all very sobering. We're always trying to figure out. Nothing what you see is what is. So, for instance, I try to be very careful with this issue here because I'm from the Soviet Union. We cannot understand and talk about this issue without first understanding how much Ukrainian people have suffered because of Soviet imperialism. How many Ukrainians were forcibly starved to death under, Stalin's official policy of starvation. Putin going into Ukraine, invading another country, killing Ukrainians. Nobody with a good conscience can dismiss this or be light about it. I'm for the Ukrainian people. Putin, this is mafiosa, KGB, ongoing Soviet Empire stuff that's very evil. Having said that, it's very sobering to think about who are the good guys. So let me go back just for a second here. So, of course, I was for the American effort to defend South Vietnam. The fall of South Vietnam was tragic. But what was the American military really doing there? So we have the good guys. If there were good guys in charge to win a war, that's good. If there's good guys in charge, then let's be for it. But is somebody else in charge, and are they really there to defend South Vietnam? Because when you look at the Gulf of Tonkin resolution and the incident of the Gulf of Tonkin, that doesn't add up. So what were we doing in Vietnam, and whose interests were we really serving? And I'm all for defending South Vietnam from communism, but is it a coincidence that we spent so long there and that ended up just leaving?
And then they just walked away.
Or was that calculated and served the interests of maybe some people very high up that don't care about the South Vietnamese people, but they just need a war for about 10 years for very evil reasons, and then they just leave? All of a sudden, Afghanistan, you don't think we could have achieved a victory there if we had people like you or General Michael Flynn or perhaps Trump, or, we can name people that we might agree are heroes, or are there other individuals in charge? Just want to say quickly here that at one time I was very reluctant about 9/11 when I started seeing all the evidence of the towers falling, of just this inside job and the truthers. I was like, oh, no, that can't be, because jihad, because I study jihad. I want to defend America from jihad. I thought that it was mutually exclusive. I was very, very limited in my vision. I didn't understand completely. I thought that to accept that there was something fishy there meant to minimize that Al-Qaeda and jihad were real threats. It's not the case. They work together. So these globalists, they can manipulate an evil power that really is an enemy, but they get people fighting for their own reasons, and they can do these things. It can be a quote-unquote inside job, but Al-Qaeda can be involved at the same time. There's just higher people in power that are orchestrating all of this, and then they get another war going for another, not 10 years, 20 years.
20 years.
And then, you know what? Yeah, you know what? Oh, yeah, okay, that served our interests, which isn't actually saving Afghan people from Sharia law. It's not really destroying Al-Qaeda. There's something else going on. My point, and Jamie Glazov's weakness perhaps, is trying to make a point after, getting distracted for an hour. But there's a method to my madness sometimes. and I'm joking about referring to myself in the third person. It's just my attempt at a sense of humor. But is Biden really trying to defend the Ukrainian people? Is that what this is really all about? Because if that's what this was all about, I would be all for it. I think we should defend the Ukrainian people against Soviet imperialism. But the evidence is mounting that that Biden, well, actually, yeah, Biden, Obama / Obama, it's all the same thing. There's other interests at stake here, and very nefarious forces are on the good side, and they're prolonging this war. And something's going on here that is very, very wrong. And it's very complicated because on the one hand, Zelensky, yes, a leader of Ukrainian people against Soviet imperialism. At first, yes, there's something admirable there. But at the same time, this is an individual that's part of the World Economic Forum.
Who stole
This is
the
an individual
election?
that's he says he got into politics because he was inspired by Justin Trudeau. Then he's inside this Klaus Schwab milieu. Look, and no, I always want to be careful here because I never want to minimize Soviet evil, Putin evil. If there is a really noble attempt to defend Ukrainian independence, but very evil powers can manipulate these things for very hazardous and very destructive agendas.
I mean, you need no. I mean, I think Donald Trump said it best when he was asked in an interview, and they tried to get him. They said, something along the lines of, "Whose side are you on?" He said, "I'm on the side of people not dying. I want people to stop dying." And at this point, I mean, what do we see other than people dying? It's the same thing in the Middle East. I mean, what do we as Americans, what do we get for all of that? We have untold numbers of dead Americans. Those numbers, I think they've lied about, especially when they play numbers with the contractors. We still have naked body scanners, so we still get treated like criminals whenever we want to fly within our own country. We still have some of these, some of these surveillance acts that the government rolled out as a result of 9/11, and we've fit trillions and trillions of dollars in defense spending. And have the American people really gotten any benefit of that? No. Have the people in these foreign countries like Afghanistan and Iraq, have they benefited? No. They've had their entire country destroyed. In many ways, their culture is worse off than it was when we went in. And now we have Ukraine, and all we're doing essentially is, it appears, trafficking weapons and throwing money into a black hole. And it's like, where's the humanity in any of this?
Yeah, and Apollo, I was very for the American effort to defeat Taliban, Al Qaeda. America's got to go to Afghanistan and all that stuff. But is that really why we were there? And I talked to quite a few people in the American military and quite a few Afghans, and a lot of them recently are they tell me, Jamie, do you know how much money, how many millions of dollars the Biden administration is giving the Taliban right now? And when you guys start finding out about that, it's very sobering. Why is that happening? There's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't know. Let's just say that, because I love the red, white, blue, I love America, and if America's going to go freedom, I'm the first one that would support that. But we can't be naive anymore, because the people that have taken control of America and American foreign policy are not necessarily looking out for American principles. That's the tragedy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Jamie, I
just want to say quickly, it just confuses me because I'm the child of Russian immigrants from the Soviet Union, and at one time I really wanted to see the world as America evil, America independence. I didn't like it when people criticized FBI and CIA because it's the KGB that's evil. But now, what's going on? The country that I loved, its love as well, present tense, but its intelligence agencies are serving the interests of Bolshevism, and the FBI is in parking lot writing the license plates of parents in school meetings being danced in front, having drag queens dancing in front of them, and the FBI is busy looking into these parents rather than doing something about Hunter Biden or Chinese spies. So it's very sobering and confusing for people that love America because they're the good guys now, because the votes have taken over the country that we love.
You're 100% right. And, I explained a little bit earlier my father's background. My mother, on her side, my grandfather, German, 100% German. They left Germany just before World War II really, really kicked off, so to speak. And so, on both sides of my family, they've been touched by that. And it's sad to me. It's very alarming to see, for instance, growing up with my father, English is his fifth language. Was just blessed. He's able to raise a family, came here, didn't speak any English when he arrived in this country, worked very hard, many types of jobs, started their own businesses so that they could, have opportunity. They were very, very poor in Greece. They're farmers. And so these are people that know hardship. They know what it's like to be without. And to see him saying things to me when I was younger, about being grateful about all the opportunities that we have, about making use of, education and being better than him. These things that we've been said. And now here we are. I'm the oldest of 6 children. I have younger siblings who are, now about 18. The youngest. I have 3 nieces and nephews. And now I look at it, and it's exactly the things that my family fled, and the things that we used to hold dear. So I think it's so imperative that people understand that this we say history repeats itself, but it's really just the circumstances. And if people are not armed with and not hungry for the education, the information to understand these patterns, and these patterns are made of humans and of actions, then we're going to find ourselves in the exact same place. We're pretty close already.
Yeah.
And it isn't that much of a leap, but I think that people are hesitant to do the hard work and to face reality, because it's easy to see it from far off and to see what could be if you lived in that bad, scary place. But once you're there, there's a degree of character and of faith that you need to have in order to face that and then battle it. So I hope that this conversation and that your books, which I'm excited to read, help people to do that, because this is the moment in history where we have a choice.
And Paulo, I'm interested, in Dostoevsky's novels and the devils. He has this theme of this demonic, chaotic, hysterical laughter of the devils, of these revolutionaries. And there's this laughter. It's very interesting. And, I often think about, in many civilizations, including the Roman Empire, when the barbarians are at the gates, they don't even need to break the gates down because there's already been such a decay on the inside. And there's some kind of, what I'm referring to here, I'm putting both of those ideas together. Sometimes we think about evil, that it's just this, Freddy Krueger character or Jason from the horror films, and he's got this axe and he's standing in front of you and he's going to kill you. Oh, it's so scary. But evil can also work with just a perverted, weird chaos that nothing makes any sense. And I think about that a lot lately. Like, you just look at Biden and, at one time he was talking about, he was in a pool and the kids were in the pool just rubbing his hairy legs under the water. Like, what is this guy talking about? Like, it's like we're in some kind of surreal dark comedy. He's talking about the kids rubbing his hairy legs under the pool. And then we shift over to Kamala. Did you see her talking to those kids about space? And like, these are the people that are defending us from China and Putin and jihad. And there's some kind of weird, while there is this monstrous evil at the gates, we also have this what I'm describing, Biden and with King Charles doesn't even know who he is, Kamala talking all this code language. I don't know. Does she have a, is she speak? I don't know what she's talking about 99% of the time, but it's of an eerie theater where nothing makes any sense. That's how evil works. It's meant to just completely, just to numb us and to make us crazy. And you know, and so it's a time to defend America, but it's also a time to really, really pray to Jesus Christ and get closer to God and lean on the New Testament, because this is a spiritual battle that we're facing.
I agree. I think that there's really just two paths. I mean, I think this goes without saying for most people listening. But I mean, at this point, you mentioned that insanity that, you know, people are, I guess, are either drinking or not. And I mean, once you start to taste it, once you see it, I think there have been many who, I mean, like yourself, you see the, you know, the forest for the trees. And now it's getting so bad. It's getting so insane. And I mean, even now, oh, there's cocaine, but we're in the White House. We couldn't figure out where it came from. There was a blind spot in the cameras, and then the balloons. You know, I mean, nothing makes any sense. So people have two choices now. It's either, because everyone's going to have to face it at some point. You're going to have to look and make a decision, because it's going to get so bad that you can't like just stay home and watch Netflix. Like, you will have to face reality, and you'll have to look at it and say, I'm okay with the insanity, and just throw yourself, I guess, headlong into the pit of complete insanity. Or you have the choice to look at it and shake yourself up and say, okay, now what do we do? Because I mean, this is, I don't think that anything, as much as I love to, you know, I trust God, and I have the utmost faith that in whatever form it looks like, we're going to make it through. But if people don't wake up and start to actually take charge of the moments that they have on every given day, and look at the results that are happening in their communities and with their neighbors, then I don't know what they expect about to be lost to all this.
Yeah. You know, I can't help from saying that, you know, I grew up in an era of, you know, there was Sylvester Stallone, Chuck Norris, Steven Seagal, you know, and you just turn on these movies now, it's just some kind of very feminine guy, and there's some woman boss that's telling him what to do, and he goes and gets her a coffee. Like, they're very brilliant in what they've done. It's all in our media. All the men are emasculated. There's no more John Wayne or, you know, or Rambo, any of that. And it's very clever what they've done. Yeah, I even walk around the streets here of LA or drive around or whatever, but I see a man and a woman walking, and the woman is ahead leading him, and he's wearing a mask. It's very interesting what they've done. And also to women. I just want to mention, just with this whole mask thing, because I'm fascinated with this. Let's make man in our own image. And in terms of our creator, how do we see our creator? We see the image of God in our faces. I mean, but it's not necessarily looking at an elbow. We see God's creation, and we're made in the image of God by looking at each other's faces. And in whose interest would it be for us not to see that we are made in the image of God? Would it be to put a mask on all of our faces? It's very much connected. It's very much connected. So sorry maybe if I've talked too much, but this is all interconnected, what it's done. Just the emasculation of the men, how emasculated the men, how all these leftist feminists have succeeded in emasculating men. And when we look at Europe, they succeeded so much in emasculating men. And this is a whole new topic. We need another show for this. But Camille Paglia is very good in explaining this. There's a lot of people that explain this phenomenon. When the leftist women and these feminists, they emasculate their men, still somewhere in their nature, they long for masculinity. And while they're emasculating the men in their own culture, they're supporting the invasion of their country by very highly testosterone men. And so they're bringing in these waves of hypermasculinity from the Middle East, but with an ideology that's against freedom. So leftist feminists play a very big role in destroying their own civilizations. But I think that's for another time and place, but I had to throw that in there. The left is very, very destructive, and it works in all of these devious ways.
Actually, I would really like to have you on again to discuss that in a few angles, because it's something that I think about a lot when we see, especially I'll just call it the general sexual perversion and degeneracy that we see through, dating life, and through, some of the fetish groups and things that we see pervading on, digital culture and in popular culture, and like with the shift towards online relationships, you see this weird inversion of the power dynamic in a between the sexes, but then you also see this weird submissive desire at the same time, where it's like they're demanding one thing and then also like begging for the other, both men and women, and it's very it's confusing in some ways to witness, but it's very, very sad, because I just see all these people being lost.
And in my book, United in Hate, I document these political pilgrimages, and they're all very suicidal. And so the leftist feminists, they're in the anti-demonstration, and they're side to side with these Islamists. And I remember watching, I was like, these women would be killed within 30 seconds if these Islamists, what's going on here? But this is the history of the left. This is what the left is about. It's a suicide mission. And so I document this in United in Hate. The leftist feminists end up being very anti-Israel. They've got to go help the poor Palestinian people, and they somehow go to Gaza, and then they start hanging around with these people in these jihadist groups, and then they end up getting raped and killed over there. This is the typical leftist narrative, and there's a kind of sacrifice of oneself. They hate life so much that they get themselves involved in these totalitarian movements that ultimately eat them up as well. And so that's what I've been studying my whole life. I've always tried to understand, why is the leftist intellectual supporting the Castroite regime, where he would be killed within about 30 minutes after they're done with him. And we're seeing that today in terms of what the Biden administration is doing. And there's kind of two camps. There's the useful idiots, but then there's the very clever leftists that are doing this all on purpose. And we have to be very honest. Like, a lot of people are, oh, Kamala is an idiot, Biden is an idiot. Okay, on some levels, definitely they might be idiots. The devil is also an idiot for choosing the wrong side. But never mistake how calculated, how maliciously, deviously planned everything is that they're doing. They're not just fools.
I agree with that. It's actually a big criticism I have of a lot of the discussion around them, because it's rather short-sighted and naive. As much as you look at their performances and their ability to coherently speak, as authentic as that may or may not be, to just say, God, they're so stupid, how does this happen? I mean, this doesn't happen by accident, and I find it rather sad to see people discuss these things as if what we're seeing can be taken at face value in the first place. So I think that's a point well made.
Paul, I'm very sorry if I overstayed my visit. I think the best way to end with this, and David, I work with David Horowitz. I'm the editor of Front Page Magazine. It's a project of the David Horowitz Freedom Center. What an honor to work alongside this hero, David Horowitz, former leftist, leader of the New Left, but they killed his friend. Black Panthers killed his friend. And he started a journey mentally where he began to realize that the Marxism that he supported by necessity made had the Black Panthers killed his friend. So David, in his memoir, Radical Son, talks about how he came out of the left and now he fights the left. And I love David, and I ended up working for him. It's a great honor. Now, in Radical Son, he talks about a friend of his, this leftist woman, and she was not going to be racist. And there was these rapes and murders happening in her neighborhood. And there was a very high chance, and people were saying that it happens to be some members of the Black community or one member of the Black community. Something was going on there. but she was not going to be racist and wouldn't lock her back door. She wasn't going to lock her back door because she's fighting for a better world and a utopian world, and she left her back door open. And you can read Radical Son and find out what happened to her. And my point is that whether you're in the line to get this potion that they want to get put into you, if you're on the side of letting completely unvetted people in the tens of thousands coming into this country, and you haven't added 2 + 2 yet of what's happening, there's a leftist and there's a suicidal enterprise engaged in. And I've always thought, you know what, you want to kill yourself? Go ahead. The sad thing is they take us down with them.
You're 100% right. We are over time. You guys, thank you for staying with us. Jamie, I've deeply enjoyed this conversation. I would definitely would like to have you on again.
And I'm so grateful that I was allowed to expand a little bit, because everything is so rushed all the time. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. That's I very much enjoy that. As much as we try to, get a lot of information in, it's some of these law-informed conversations, much like books today, is contrary to the shift that has happened in information and communication, both on social media. So I do think it's important, and I'm glad that we got to do that today. You guys, please check out his book. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. No, Paul, I was going to say, I always think about that moment at Calvary at the foot of the cross, and Mary and the disciples, and how they were crying, and what a dark moment that was, what those dark days were. And then when they went for those days at their house, and how they were crying, and Jesus had died, and then the ladies went to go wash his body, and somebody was standing there and said, why do you look for the living among the dead? And during our most darkest times, we know that Jesus is a reality. And while our hearts hurt, and while we fight for justice, and it could be very frustrating, the darker it gets, let's remember to always dance in the streets, because it means our Savior is closer and closer.
Amen to that. I don't usually do this, Jamie. We do pray at the end of every show. But if you'd like to, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to pray us out.
No, you do that if you don't mind. And
sure,
I'll be
of course. Before I do that, you guys, please make sure that you check out his book, Obama's True Legacy: How He Transformed America, as well as his other ones. I have, while we were live here, I ordered United in Hate, as well as Jihadist Psychopath, and one other I can't remember. So I'm excited to read them. Again, thank you for joining us today, Jamie.
Amen.
With that, Father God, Lord, I ask for strength, and I ask for clarity. I want to thank you for the time that we've gotten to spend here over the last hour and a half, the conversation with Jamie. I thank you for men like him, for bright minds who can help spark the minds of others. I thank you for this opportunity in history to bear witness, but also to play a part, to be your hands and feet here on this earth. I pray that we are wise as serpents, but we also do not get lost watching the screens, watching the current events, that we have the wherewithal and we are grounded with your spirit. We are grounded with your light and with your message, that we here are able to move, able to navigate, able to build, able to change history if we so choose to take hold of it, that we do not witness our own destruction and are not lost in the beauty of the chaos, but instead choose to create. We choose to use that divine spark that you've given us to be creators, not just to watch as history repeats itself. I ask that we can be the arbiters of reality for those in our lives, and that we choose to act with love, that we can be so powerful as to influence others to wake up, to care for their own lives, to care for their futures, that we can give our children a future that we can be proud of, that we can beat back this evil, and we can turn the tide of this nation, that we can reverse the progress that evil has made in our hearts, in our minds, in our schools, in our families, even in our bedrooms. I ask that we choose, that we have intention to create love and to build something beautiful. That we are not fooled by the same tricks that the devil has always played on us. That we do not barter our souls. We do not make that bet. That we choose just to stand in strength and to continue marching forward. That we choose to see each other as the divine sparks that we are. And I ask that we do so humbly. I ask that we focus every day when we wake up, and every moment if we feel lost, that we just listen for your words. That we feel that drive in our hearts that begs us to do your will and to act in good. That begs us to be the leaders that you put us here to be. I ask this
Amen.
In the name of our children, in your holy name, that we may be as Jesus and walk as him and follow his example. Amen.
Praise Jesus. Amen. Apollo, are you sure you're not in the wrong profession? I think you could have been a great pastor.
My name actually, Papas, means priest or bishop in Greek.
All right. What a great pleasure it was to speak to you today. One of the most enjoyable conversations I've had in such a long time. And Apollo, my parents had a certain atmosphere around our table growing up. And I felt like I was with family today. Thank you very much.
I will give that sentiment right back to you, Jamie. I've deeply enjoyed this conversation. I look forward to speaking with you again.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Be blessed. All right, guys, please check out Jamie Glazov's book. I know it's a Friday, so sometimes we like to keep it a little bit fun, but that was that was very gratifying for me, and I hope that you all got a lot out of that. Please, share, do all the things that help us with the algorithm, because we are in an information war. But I look very much forward to reading Jamie's books, and I will definitely be sharing that information with you. I got the Obama's one. As much as I don't like Amazon, I got it on Kindle so I could start reading it over the weekend. But you guys, I like physical books, so I advise you to order physical copies if you can. It's a very different experience. And I wish you all an amazing weekend. Please take this time to enjoy time with your family. Just be at one in this moment with the Lord, all the blessings that we have, even in the worst times when it feels like everything is falling down around us. Even just the sun that comes through your window is a reminder of God's love for you. And we have infinite moments that we can influence others. So be an angel for somebody this weekend if you can. Give them a smile, give them hope. Just remind yourself and them that we are all here to play this role together. And I know that we will win. God is always with us. He's always with you. While things are getting crazy, we have a most amazing opportunity to see these revelations, to understand the true nature of this country, of the world that we live in, and to define ourselves through that process. So I ask you to do that. Have an amazing weekend. God bless you all. Please follow and subscribe to At Conservative Daily. And if you like the audio edition, this is probably a great one to listen. So check us out on Apple Podcasts. Again, Jamie Glazov, the book Obama's True Legacy, How He Transformed America. I know the links for that are down in the description. Have a blessed weekend. It's been an honor to have this conversation with you all today, and I look forward to seeing you all Monday.
We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. And this makes us special among the nations of the earth. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. It is time to check and reverse the growth of government which shows signs of having grown beyond the consent of the governed. All of us need to be reminded that the federal government did not create the states. The states created the federal government.
The number was, and it's a diversion and tactic.
You believe that Ukrainians are fighting?
It is time for us to realize that we're too great a nation to limit ourselves to small dreams. I do not believe in a fate that will fall on us no matter what we do. I do believe in a fate that will fall on us if we do nothing. Let us renew our determination, our courage, and our strength. And let us renew our faith and our hope. We have every right to dream heroic dreams. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look.